Hello, hello, Jeff Grande, Journeys with Jeff. Another fascinating journey and adventure that we're going to go on today. We'll get right to it. Jim Birmingham was born in, I got to read this because it's long, Newtown, Clonfed County, Roscommon, Southern Ireland. And that he spent his childhood there. And then he had a pretty interesting, fascinating steps of his journey, and he wound up in West Hartford as the deputy fire chief of the West Hartford Fire Department. And we're going to kind of recount all of the steps that he took on his way to West Hartford with his lovely wife June, who's agreed to be here with us today. So Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
Nice to have you here. Let's go back to Southern Ireland. You were born in Southern Ireland.
Yes,
and what was it, a rural area or a urban area, a city, or?
It was a rural area, very rural area. In fact, I was born in my grandparents' thatched house.
A thatched house?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and the remnants are still standing there. And I grew up in that area and went to the grammar school there, which is called a national school in Ireland. It's infants through 8th grade, like the grammar schools here, and went to school there. My parents had a business of a grocery and bar business, and as a kid growing up, like all young kids in rural areas, we were broken into helping around the house.
And you probably had a lot of chores to do, and
yes.
And you went through 8th grade.
Yes.
And then, what did you do after that?
My parents decided, well, we're going to put you to work. So, when I finished 8th grade, I was put to work and learning the grocery and bar business and the store that they owned in Ireland.
And so you were still 8th grade, you were young.
Oh, it was just
12,
14 years old.
What, at that point, Jim, as you grew up and you were listening to the old folks, the adults talking
Yes.
back and forth, did you overhear any talk about the IRA and the Northern Ireland effort to be independent and reunited with Southern Ireland? Was a lot of political talking at the bar, especially?
No, not much at the bar, because people were very, very careful. Because the men that were involved in the original fight for freedom, when the 26 counties got its freedom, those men really went back into the woodwork. They had done a wonderful job, and they didn't want any recognition.
Why?
Because
the authorities paying attention to who, like subversive people and all that stuff?
No, they weren't. They just felt that they had done their job. We got our freedom. We're back. We have our own government for the 26 counties, and they were satisfied with that. At that particular time, when that happened, from what I know a bit about the Irish history of that period, some of those men were looking forward to, well, over time we'll negotiate getting the north of Ireland back, but that still hasn't happened. And again, as a kid, when I got to my teenage years, there was some activity, but I never got involved in it or was interested. I was more interested in the Gaelic football and hurling, and as a young teenager growing up, what girls do I get to know?
That sounds like the universal normal boy.
Right.
Interests of.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, before we move on, very briefly here, as you grew older and you became more aware and informed of what was going on, did you develop any opinions as an adult, about the struggle between Northern Ireland and Great Britain? And
the only conclusion I came to myself, eventually it'll be solved at the discussion table. And when the Second World War was over, you figured with all the uniting of countries and the organizations that were organized to work towards peace, that eventually the north of Ireland would become, and I hope and pray that someday I see it become 32 counties. At the moment, they have a major problem because of England wanting to leave the European economic market, and they're worried in Ireland and in the north of Ireland, what will it do to business? Because again, in the business world, you have 28 countries in the European Union, and they work together. They really work very well together, but the English people voted to get out of it. The politics of that, I haven't bothered in asking questions from my cousins in England.
Well, just in general, do you think that the European Union, the concept of the European Union, and the goals that's it's directing itself at, do you think it's worth it to keep it together?
Yes, I believe, because one of the main reasons, from what I have read, that they formed the European Union after I had emigrated was because of all the problems there was in Europe between the countries fighting each other. And I would take my guess that they took an example from the United Nations, and I think the political leadership of the United States had an influence on some people. I mean, if it wasn't for the United States, we would be living under a different system for many years.
So basically the overall, the emphasis is more on collaboration and cooperation as opposed to conflict and competition.
Yes.
And that's a worthwhile thing to work toward.
Yes,
in your opinion, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that eventually it will be solved. People will see the need for it. Again, when Ireland was overran many hundreds of years ago, it was, again, England wanted protection from anyone coming in and taking over Ireland, and they wanted control.
Yeah.
No, it was politics.
Well, as you were growing up, I can't help but wonder, a thatched roof house.
Yes.
In a rural section of Ireland.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were a little boy, did you feel poor, like you were in a poor, was it kind of a poor environment that you thought you were in, or was it where you had both of your parents with you? And was it basically a positive experience, even though there was some, lack of wealth?
It was a positive experience, even though, like you just said, there was a lack of wealth. You knew you weren't exceptionally wealthy, but you had enough to survive on. And in the west of Ireland, where I grew up, was one of the poorest areas of rural Ireland. And down in the southwest corner, again, we were just coming out of getting our own freedom in 1921. And then we were, at the time I was a kid growing up, we were coming out of the Second World War, where all of a sudden technology was taking off and you had great ideas from people. The best thing that ever happened was the Marshall Plan that the United States gave that helped rebuild Europe. Yeah. I mean, Europe is what it is today because of the Marshall Plan. And I just know that from my parents or the older people sharing it, or the articles that I have read here in magazines.
Yeah. So okay, so now you're through with the 8th grade. You're working at the bar and grocery business of your parents. You're still a young man. Yeah. And I know that in 1957 you came to America.
Correct.
What is it that? Why did you? What is it that motivated you to uproot yourself from this comfortable confines of rural Ireland and get on a boat and come to the United States?
Well, at that time, I just wanted to change from what I was working at in the bar and grocery business, and I had figured I'll try out for the Irish Police Department. I had a friend who had just joined it, and I'll give it a try. And another thought I had, well, I don't really know how to run a business. Let me inquire with some of the big stores in Ireland to see if they have a training program where I can go away and learn how to run a business. And I was waiting for a response from the place that I had approached, because I knew some of the people that worked there, but I didn't hear an answer. I went, then I'll try the police. I went to put in my application and get measured at the local police station, and I was only 5'8", not 5'9". I was a very disappointed young man being turned down, and no, I didn't stand a chance.
Now this is in Ireland.
This is in Ireland.
So you said, the heck with it, I'm going to the United States.
Well, in the meantime, I had cousins here, friends here, and I said, a brother of mine had come before me. He was a carpenter, and he had left maybe about 9 months before I decided to leave. So I said, I'll give it a try. And I put in to come, and I was able to get here on an American passport because my father and mother were here from 1921 to 34. My father became a naturalized citizen, and in his old papers with the regulations from the Second World War, I came into the country, the US, on an American passport. And I was able to get a work at manufacturing at Pratt & Whitney in East Hartford. Cousins took me over there to get an interview, and I was interviewed, and they hired me and sent me to a mission school for 2 weeks. This was the first time I ever saw big machinery in a factory. You know, you grew up in a farmland area, and I had the 2 weeks there, and after the 2 weeks training, I went over to the factory, and I met wonderful people. My supervisors over there were very helpful to see that I did things right and to continue training.
And you were a drill press operator?
Drill press operator.
And then you're going along minding your own business as
Yes.
a drill press operator, and you got a letter in the mail from Uncle Sam.
Yeah, he says, your country needs you. That was 2 weeks or 3 weeks after I had arrived.
Right into it, wow.
Yeah. But again, I knew when I came, if you were between the ages of 18 and 26, every male coming into the United States, along with the men born here, were susceptible to being called up for military service. And on July the 4th weekend, I was on the bus heading for Fort Dix for basic training. And that was quite an experience. Here I am in Fort Dix, and I'm meeting people from all parts of the northeast, New England area, down New Jersey, and men of all nationalities, all colors, all religions. And
That must have been a very interesting cultural, because when you grew up, all you saw in your surroundings was like white Irish guys.
that's it.
And gals.
Yes.
And so here you come to the United States, and you see all different sizes and shapes and colors and nationalities, and
Yes.
and were you just fascinated by that?
I was fascinated by that. And again, when I worked in the factory with the people of different backgrounds and everything, they were very, very helpful and very courteous, and offered suggestions. And then when I went in the Army in Fort Dix and going through basic training, the men that I trained with for the military, again, you realized regardless of race, creed, or color, you all depend on each other for each other's life. And that
right.
was a way, and we helped each other and we worked together as a team. We had good instructors. I mean, you had DIs and you didn't say boo. And one of the people that I remember, one of the officers, when he was at West Point a trainee, he was in his 3rd year, and part of his training, he told us, was he had to come out and spend a training period with going through basic training, because he was going into the infantry. That's the division he was going into, and he was a great example. So was the other DIs that he had, and the first sergeant and the captain in charge of our training company.
And that, I can imagine, just jumping ahead, I want to just jump ahead briefly. This training at Fort Dix, and kind of like you're learning to work together and to cover each other's back.
Yeah.
That probably came into play later on as you became a police officer and a fireman. That must have been a very big part of that too.
Yeah, very much so. The teamwork, and and again, you realize in the short while I was on the police that you depended on each other for each other's life. You worked together, and again, the other things didn't make a bit of difference. And you realize too, I'm serving the people. When I went over onto the police department of West Hartford while I was waiting to get on the fire, you realize you're serving the people, and the men, you were taught, the men who were there before you took you under their wing, and they said, kid, keep your mouth shut, eyes and ears open, that gun in its holster. The training officer then, at that time, I had spent a few hours with him. He taught me there were 5 times you take that revolver out of the holster. And the men were great. And the citizens that I met when I walked a beat or was in the cruiser were good. And it was the same switching over to the fire department. Again, most of the men that I met on the police were World War II and Korean vets. The same on the fire department. They were World War II and Korean vets. So in the firehouse, they took you under their wing. I had a captain at the time and a lieutenant who were very much into training, and every day and every night for a certain few hours, we had those training programs laid out. If you weren't responding to alarms or going out and doing fire prevention work, that was very important, the fire prevention work, because we had 5 stations, or 4 when I started in West Hartford, and each engine truck company went out and did fire prevention work in their areas. And you learned the district, you learned the different types of businesses that were there, and where you had to watch out for special hazards, where you didn't throw water on certain things in manufacturing places.
Well, would you agree that one of the effects of working and cooperating and developing a trust in a diverse group of people that you worked with, like after a while, it's like you almost not even conscious of where they were born or what they look like. It's like it doesn't matter after a while, right?
That's true.
Because they're human beings, you're a human being, and you care about each other.
Yes.
You trust each other.
Yes.
You respect each other.
Yeah. Like, for instance, when I was shipped to Texas after basic training in the military for artillery crew training, I wound up in Fort Bliss, Texas, on the Mexican border. I mean, that was another big change, and what I saw down there, and even to the things that are happening there today. Unfortunately, we were called in for orientation. You were told how to behave, what to be careful for, and I saw things then still happening down there. And I pray each day that our politicians here and our president and the people down there can sit down and solve the problems.
No, I can't. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Sit down and solve the problems.
Yes.
Negotiate, compromise, monologue,
Yeah.
dialogue,
Yeah.
rather.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
what a novel concept that is.
Yes.
Jeez. So at any rate, now you got a GED
Yes.
at Hartford High,
Yeah.
and somewhere along the line there, in 1958, after you'd only been here for about a year, you went to the Irish Club, and just minding your own business, and all of a sudden, what happened?
Well, someone come over to me and says hello. In fact, my brother introduced me to my wife, June. And then
We get the camera on. This is June Birmingham, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
This is Jim's wife of how many years? You guys?
well, 59.
59 years. And you have how many kids?
Two.
Two kids.
Yeah.
And June, I'm going to get to you in a minute. I'm going to ask a couple of questions of June to contribute here. Shortly, you guys were married in
January the 16th, 1960.
1960. And so then you were, now, before you spent most of your career, 30-something years with the fire department?
33 and a half with the fire
And
department.
you rose to deputy chief,
Yes,
but you started off as a policeman.
yes.
Let me ask you, as a policeman, as a fire department, as a resident of West Hartford,
Yeah.
from the mid to late 50s to today, has West Hartford changed a lot in 50 plus years?
It
Has there been
has.
a big change?
There's the change in the demographics in the town. And again, the population has increased a little bit more. And the building, you look around the town, the places that I saw green fields in when I was in the police department or started in the fire, they're no longer green, there's buildings there.
Well,
And
yeah, it's really built up a lot.
Yes,
So you were in rural Ireland, out in the country. You've worked in a bar, you've worked in the grocery business, you've been to Fort Dix, you've been to UTC as a drill operator.
yeah.
What is it? What is it that motivated you to get into law enforcement and then to firefighting? Why did you get attracted to do that for a living?
Even though I was very well treated working in the factory and got on the tool and die apprenticeship course. After I had done a year of that, I kind of got tired of being inside, being used of the outdoors that I was used to in Ireland, where I said I want to get something that'll take me in and out. And I had a cousin in the Hartford Fire Department who had just retired, and you're going to be surprised at what he told me. I said, I'm going to try the Hartford Fire. No, he says, put your name in West Hartford. And I looked at him and I says, what do you mean? He says, let me tell you something. Now, some people may not like what he said to me and what I'm going to say. He said, politically, Hartford is going down the tubes. He said to me. And I was surprised, but again, over the years, I've seen a big change. And so anyways, I went out and put my name in West Hartford, and but there was no openings in the fire. And 2 weeks after I had been out in the town hall applying for the fire, I saw the advertisement in the Hartford Current and Times that they were looking for policemen. I said, I'll give it a try. So I went out and filled out the application, took the written exam, and I passed it. And I passed the oral interview by the chief, and then they did a record check on me, a police check, and after everything that cleared and the medical exam, I was hired and went to work on the second shift. And again, at that time in police work, it was on-the-job training. Maybe the large city departments in any state in the Union had a training school, but again, mine was on the street training, and the senior police officers who were there, they took you under your wing, or their wing, and they told you how to do things.
Well, Jim, everybody's life is a series of experiences.
Yes.
And to a certain degree or another, we all learn lessons from those experiences. What would you say, looking back, as a young boy, as a husband, as a father, as a firefighter, as a policeman, as a human being, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned in your life?
I think, well, going back to when I was growing up as a kid in Ireland, when I was old enough and my parents said, you'll do some things around the shop, like the grocery and bar, and meeting people, learning how to get along with people and how to keep your mouth shut. That was one of the greatest things. Particularly my father was very good at handling people, and he knew how to handle people. Now I know why when I read about his history. And then as I was working behind the bar, mixing with the people, you knew that if you were curt with people or short with them, you wouldn't have their business. They wouldn't be coming in. So you disciplined yourself. And then I'll never forget an instance that happened to me when I was playing the Gaelic football. Like, we moved from where we were when I was a kid going to grammar school to another town 5 miles away, Dunmore. And I was vice captain of the minor football team. One day, I happened to be also the captain, and my conduct on the field wasn't too good. I was fighting everyone's battle. I was mad at the referee because the way it was being reffed wasn't fair. So the president of our club says to me, he wouldn't let anybody else get in this car. He says, get in the car, I want to talk to you. So I got in the car, and he laid me out good about my conduct on the field playing the Gaelic football. And he said, the referee is the one that's refereeing the game, you're not refereeing it. And he taught me how to keep my mouth shut playing Gaelic football and how to respect. I came away from his 5 minutes sitting in the car with him, and I tell you, I learned respect for other people. I learned the respect for other people who were in charge and directing you.
June, let me finish up with you, June Birmingham. What was it like being married to a policeman and to a firefighter? Was it nervous? Did you get nervous about that, or what was
sometimes
it like?
I would, but basically no. I was there, but like when he was in the fire department, sometimes it would be hard, thinking about the sirens going off and stuff. But Jim never shared any of the terrible things that happened to him there when he was working at it. It was always either later time or whatnot. But I was listening to him right now, and for me, he always talks about everybody else. Everybody else was good to him. But I think he's the man he is today because he is the most compassionate, understanding person that I know. And he helps everyone. And we've been married almost 60 years, and unfortunately I've been sick a lot. But you know what? He doesn't complain, the things he has to do. I think that lesson, when you asked her what he was there, a thought came to me when he was, I can't remember how old he was, but it was a Sunday, and everybody was going to church, and he was in bed and sleeping. So they went off, and fortunately his brother has passed away. He came back to the house because he forgot his mass book. And there was Jim's bed on fire. And it was really lucky that he got out alive, and he often said to me, after the thing about coming to being a fireman, was that to the training and the caring and the talking and getting along with people. That's who he is. He gets along with everyone, you know.
I think that's a very poignant point to end the program. That anybody's life is really about, isn't it about the love that we create?
Yes.
And not just love for somebody in my immediate family, and then my love and my responsibility stops there. You've shown concern and compassion and love for your family, for your children, for your coworkers, and for just people, humanity in general. And that, I think, is a wonderful example that we can all take, and to remind ourselves when we find ourselves getting caught up in these disagreements about different political stuff and all that stuff, that really our purpose here is to our overall goal is to love each other and to care about each other, and you've certainly been a very good example of that. Jim and Jim, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today and sharing your journey.
Thank you. In fact, one of the activities in the fire department that helped me, again, about working with people was, I was active in our union executive board, but when I was being broken into human or labor relations, our agent, state agent, was unbelievable. He sat us down, and this is when municipal employees just got collective bargaining right in the mid-60s, and he told us how to act and how to work with the councils and the town manager, and he
very good.
Yeah, he was a mentor, one of the mentors for me. Like the men in the department, I still remember Captain Shavy.
Yeah.
And
well, we got to end at the end of the show. I want to just thank all you people once again for watching Journeys with Jeff. We have some great guests coming in the future, so please stay tuned, and remember, we're on YouTube. You can share the shows, all these interviews with people from all over the country, all over the world for that matter. Anybody who can get to YouTube. All the shows are on YouTube, and thanks again for watching.